Welcome, everyone. If you have not been here before, the Potomac River Jazz Club has these monthly jazz talks. We began them during the lockdown to help support musicians when they couldn't get income from performing, and have had a lot of really good feedback about them and have just continued them on and on. The Potomac River Jazz Club has been bringing live traditional jazz to the DC area for 51 years. And that's bands and jams and various educational components, a youth ensemble that we support, all kinds of things. And anyway, we are continuing in the, we'll call it light education, but fun and entertaining talks that we bring in musicians from all over the place to do. And so we're really excited tonight to have Holley talking about the Boswell Sisters. Number one, wonderful musician, singer in your own right, but you also have quite the Boswell brain. She's all things Boswell. So I'm going to hand over the reins to her, and as I do, if you would please mute yourself just to make sure our sound quality is good, and she definitely is up for a little bit of conversation or question here and there. So, if you want to chime in with a question, just flag her down or wait to a good stopping point, and we'll definitely entertain those. So I'm going to spotlight you so they can see you and not everybody else, and then we are good to go.
Well, hi guys and ladies and gents. You know me, I'm Holley Bendtsen. Been in New Orleans, playing traditional jazz for 43 years now. My specialty has always been the music of the Boswell Sisters. I don't know why or how, but all my life I have grown up choosing to sing the harmony over the melody. Always. I sang harmonies with Elvis when I was a kid. I would put a fourth part on Peter, Paul, and Mary. I never knew I was doing it. It was just completely just a thing I did. And my dad finally figured out what I was doing when I was like in school, elementary school. He goes, well, you're really choosing to do that. He says, that's pretty good, and a lot of musical tastes we got in our family from my mom and dad. They were kids, teenagers, and young people during the 40s. So they chose to have, Glenn Miller was their favorite, Nat King Cole. All these people were always played in our house. And I think thanks to the Columbia Record Company, which we're probably all enough, except maybe you, to realize that the Columbia Record Company would give you, I think, 9 to 12 LPs for $1 or $5. They would send you one every week, and you either sent it back or you had to pay for it. And of course, you always ended up paying for them all. And that's how I heard so many good people, just a variety of people: Julie London, Tony Bennett, Ahmad Jamal, live at the Pershing. I'll never forget that Poinciana. I was hip into that when I was in 6th and 7th grade, not knowing why, but just, I love this. I'm playing it again. And I grew up in North Louisiana. My hometown is Coshada, Louisiana, maybe 3,000 people in the entire parish. So less in the town. And I can honestly say that my family and my ancestors have been there since before the Louisiana Purchase. They got land grants after a Mexican war, just before the Louisiana Purchase. And I think my parents' generation was the first generation not to stay there and not to stay living there and not to continue farming cotton or whatever folks were farming. And my grandparents were merchants. I had lovely parents that were not a bit like the going culture. They just weren't. And I don't know why, but we never were taught a lot of things other people were taught. And I'd say both my parents were as non-racist as it gets. My dad, being a basketball coach, helped. And he would spend his time like going in segregation, he'd go to the black high schools, volunteer to officiate their tournaments, and scout for the Northeastern colleges and the out West colleges. And he'd get these kids college scholarships. And we didn't know how many it had been until when he passed away. People started showing up at this funeral, and it was a full church. Probably the most Black people that have ever been in a white Protestant church in Coshada, Louisiana in history were there that day, including people that flew in. I remember a power forward and a center walking my mom down the aisle that day. And it was just, I'm blessed to have had those parents. And my dad's style of singing, he liked to sing like Bing Crosby or Frank Sinatra. And I was trying to explain to my granddaughter today, we were singing in the car. And I was telling her, well, we would sing songs together in the car. And she'd go, I want to sing by myself. That's my granddaughter. I've got a young granddaughter that's 8 that has been the person that inherited the performing gene. And she likes to get the full attention most of the time. And there could be a moment when they come cruising through here because they live next door. So I don't know if they'll show up or not, but if so, that's all it is. So when I moved to New Orleans, it was the early 70s when I came here. I was newly divorced. I got my divorce from my first husband here. And I had always played music. I'd always sung back the folk singing days. And then when we were at college, it was the hoot nanny type period. And we all played and sang music as entertainment at that time in college. And I hung out with a bunch of musicians. And if you're not from Louisiana, this might not mean anything to you, but all of the Malone brothers that were later in the Rhapsodizers and in the Radiators and in the this and that bands, I came up with all of them. And we used to just do all sorts of things. We just realized the other day that how many years it had been since we attended the New Orleans Pop Festival and saw Janis Joplin and just everybody. The only person we missed seeing was Jimi Hendrix. He wasn't there, but everyone else was. So we're just a bunch of old musicians here. So I used to go down to the Maple Leaf Bar, and every Wednesday night, it would be my favorite band, and it would be Kurt Casson and the Wheeler Sisters. Kurt Casson, that was kind of a jazz, jump, jive sort of band, and a lot of swing they did. And they did not one, not two, but they did 3 Boswell sister songs. And I'm a harmony fan, and I didn't know who they were or where that music came from. And their drummer was Dr. Bruce Rayburn. Now he's was the head of Hogan Jazz Archives, but at that time he wasn't. He just worked there, and he was their drummer. And I'm asking him, I said, I think he dated one of the sisters. There were 2 women and a man that sang. And I said, where do these songs come from? Where did that Sentimental Gentleman song come from? And where did that Sheltering Palms that y'all do come from? And he went, oh, he said, I found this great record for $5 in the cutout bin at Smith's Records on St. Charles Avenue. So I said, well, who is it? And he says, it's these women that were from New Orleans, and their names are the Boswell sisters. And I went, I'm going to go buy that record. And I was hot down there the next day, and I was just very interested to hear what they sounded like. So I bought that Biograph reissue record that had taken a lot of 78s and put them together on an LP, which was happening a lot in the 60s and 70s. This would have been the 70s, toward the middle of the 70s. So I get it, and I start listening to it, and I realize these girls, not only are they wonderful, and is it something totally unique, but they're pitched really low. They're like second soprano, alto, and almost girl baritone. The contralto is so low. And Robin knows, the fishing musician over there, she is another girl baritone. And we have a fantasy that one day we'll go and do just nothing but the girl baritone people singing together and see what that sounds like. So there's that. So I started hearing the music and then thinking, well, we've got to figure out. I just thought I could do this. I said, I bet I could do this music. And I would tell people about it all the time. And I would try to talk folks into doing it with me. And who eventually, I got a call from Joe Bradford. And do you know the New Leviathan Oriental Foxtrot Orchestra from New Orleans? They are a 17-piece orchestra that play nothing. Almost nothing they play is past the 20s. They barely go past World War I. and they get up in there and play all these ragtime Oriental foxtrots. They're really doing it. So their mother was booking entertainment for a debutante party at the New Orleans Country Club, and they had been hired. Their whole band would play all evening. And the Texas millionaire that was putting on this party for his daughter, newly arrived in New Orleans, didn't want any stops in the music for breaks. Said you have to have somebody else play in between. And she called me, and she had that old good New Orleans accent, like, Holley, you know that thing, that Boswell sister thing you're always thinking you can do? And I go, yeah. And she goes, well, could you do it for this country club party we have for this debutante, blah, 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 December. She gave the date, and I went, oh, sure, right. Yeah, we could do that. I had never done it. I had no other people talked into it. So I finally talk in to other people, and it ends up being my old pal, Susie Malone, who we've done music together since college. And then a young girl that was just a senior in high school named Yvette Volker, and she's still with us today. The only time we've ever changed personnel is that center voice, and we've had to change it twice due to people coming in and out of town. But that was our first job. And the funny part of it is, if you're at New Orleans, here's Joe Bradford, kind of an uptown lady. Well, this man is spending a fortune on this party at the country club. I go, really? She goes, and it's sad, really, because, they're from Texas. They'll never get into society. They'll never be in Rex or Comas. That's huge here. So that was our first gig. And from then on, 1979, we've still been doing it. So I'm studying about the Boswell sisters. Who are the Boswell sisters? Connie was still alive at the time I started trying to find them. And just at the time I finally got up to New York, where I was really going to try to find where she lived and get with her, she was hospitalized and she died of her ongoing bout with digestive form of cancer. And so I never got to meet her. But we knew that the last sister, Helvetia, Vet Boswell, was alive. And so I wrote her this probably frightening letter that was multiple pages long in my own hand. And David McCain, who we call the Wizard of Boz, because he's done all the research. He sent me a whole binder to show y'all. But he was sent because she already knew him to meet me and figure out if I was crazy or not. I think that was the idea. So he met me and he proved me. And we ended up, I went up there before I even started doing the trio to meet her and to get together with her. So that was the beginning of all of it for us. So when you start studying the Boswell sisters, in the beginning, there was no internet. Today, you can probably get right on the internet and see way more information than you might ever know. But let me try to get this little PowerPoint going here. Now, I'm going to try to risk sharing the screen, guys. I'm not technical, but I'm going to try it here. Let's see if this works. And let me find share. Let me find the Boswell sister. All right. Go back to the beginning. So this is, I should make it full screen. Oh, that didn't work. Apparently that was full screen. Uh-oh. I don't know how to make it larger than this. Well, here's hoping y'all can see it because
it's still visible. I think it's okay.
Because this is over here, I can't read what's over there, and I'm not that familiar with it really. Wait, this says slideshow. Maybe that'll do it. Yay! Can you see it?
Yeah, it's big. It's big now.
Yeah, big and wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is our girls that born May 20th, 1911, and she died in 1988 on November 12th. Actually, I never noticed that date before. Martha, she's my favorite because she's the girl baritone. They had a nickname for her, and her nickname was called Toad. And why was she called Toad? Because she said, y'all never give me nothing to sing but the toad notes on the bottom. So I covered the toad notes. When Martha died, she died first, 1958. On her headstone, there's her name and her dates of birth. But they wanted to put Toad on there, but they didn't want to seem insulting. So they put it on there spelled backwards. So a bunch of us people that were trying to find out research were going crazy trying to figure out what Day Oats was, but it was just Toad spelled backwards. So that was Martha. She was the eldest. That was the youngest. And here's Connie here. And she is the main voice that you hear when they're singing together. Most of the solos go to Connie. Once in a blue moon, they might go to Martha or Vet. And those of us who really listen can tell you exactly what that is when it's somebody besides Connie. So these three ladies grew up here in New Orleans at the same time that jazz was growing up in New Orleans. So they were contemporaries of Louis Armstrong. They were just lucky to live here at that time, and they weren't born here. Their parents were very unusual people for the time, that they weren't mainstream people at all. They didn't act the same way as Joe Bradford did about this girl will be nothing because she has no money. She'll never be a debutante. These ladies were middle class, granted a bit upper middle class compared to how we live today. And they didn't have any pretensions to society other than performing for them occasionally. And they did everything this tight together all the time. Connie here had a bout with what was likely polio early in her life. I personally had polio at 4 years old. So she had it at a preschool age. And then later on, because her legs weren't strong, she suffered an accident because kids were pushing her in a little red wagon, a metal wagon, and it took a tumble and she got a further injury to her back, which made it even less, she was even less able than she had started out. So the parents wanted them to stick together over everything. So their mother's idea was everybody studying music, everybody studying classical music. It began with their elder brother, and all three of them were also educated classically here. They studied at the French Opera House, and they did recitals there. The French Opera House burned in about 1919, so they were elementary school age at this time. They attended McDonough No. 7 school in the neighborhood, where the way they'd get back and forth, Connie never had a wheelchair till they left town to go on the road. Her sisters would literally hold their hands in what they call pack saddle and make a little seat for her. And that's how they got her up and down the steps at school, because McDonough No. 7 still operates. It's the longest continuously operating elementary school in the United States. It's still in that neighborhood, still a New Orleans public school, which, by the way, I did 32 years teaching in New Orleans public schools myself. So the first person who passed on was Martha at a young age, 1958. Then later, Connie died just 76. I was literally in town just after she died, not knowing that she had died, trying to find her and talk to her. Now that, luckily, because of David McCain, we did get to know each other. I did get to meet her. I got to know her as a friend for many, many years. She was hysterically funny and quick-witted and just always that 1930s wisecracking thing. You know, let me tell you something. They think they know, but they don't really know. That was her. She was right there all the time. So the three of them grew up singing harmonically, naturally, in their home. And see which is going to make me go to the next one. Let's see. Not that. Now I got to try to figure out how to get to the next slide. Oh, now I've got it all pretty. Let me get out of it so I can move it. Okay. Yeah, the slideshow thing gets covered up when the pod is here. These are their parents. These were not mainstream parents at all. This, as you can see, they look a good bit like their mother, Meldania. And She, born 1897, finally passed away in 1947. She and her husband, AC, they met traveling with a carnival show. I picture something like a backwoods carnival. They would travel through towns and a tent show. And then when they get to a town like my old hometown, they put up the tent and people would come in from all over the country to see whatever it is they had to offer. I don't remember what she did. I think she rode horseback and did some gymnastic type things of that sort. And he was a juggler, and he would balance things on his all his life. He would get up from the dinner table and say, I can balance this chair on my chin. And that was the type dad he was. They had the children not in New Orleans. All the children were born somewhere else. So they finally end up in 1914 in New Orleans, and the tent show days are gone. They've been at Kansas, they've been in Georgia, and they end up in New Orleans, where AC gets a really good job. He's going to be an executive with Fleischmann's Yeast Company here in New Orleans. And that was enough to have a lovely home, 3 servants, a good car. I mean, you had a very nice life for the income he made doing that. So let me see if I can get it to go out. So they're pretty dour looking, but Mama there, she's the guts behind the operation. This is their brother, and his name is Clyde. Clyde was a violinist. He was also classically trained. And very sadly, he was their only son and their eldest child. He died in the pandemic of 1918, and he was 18 years old. He was born in 1900. He was drafted into the Army. He never even made it to the base. He got sick before that and was one of the many, many people that died, young people that died in that pandemic. So short life for Clyde. Let me go to the next one. Okay. To get to the next one. This is the baby picture for the Boswells. Toots. Okay. Okay, this is Connie, and she still looks like she does later. She already looks that way. This is Martha. In fact, I know their faces so well, I can actually tell who they are just by looking at this. And Martha's the eldest. Connie's next. And I don't know what age she was when the polio struck her. She was able to walk at the time it happened, but you can notice that her legs may be quite smaller than her sister's legs as we go on. And that's a cute baby picture of them. Ladies. This is this right here is picture of a recital they were doing at the Old French Opera House on Bourbon Street. And since it burned down 1919, this has to precede that at some point. So these were their classical instruments. Martha was always piano. Connie was cello. And they figured it was upper arm strength, was good for her. And Vet was given violin to play. Now, if you wonder why her name is Vet, her real name was Helvetia. And if you want to know where that came from, Connie was not well when Vet came along. Her mother literally named her baby after the name on top of the pet milk can, Helvetia. If the old pet milk can said, and it was meant to be a Swiss name, about the goodness of their dairy food. So she ends up being named after the milk can. It's kind of not so glamorous.
Illustrious career that we'll learn a little bit more about. But let's just take a moment just to listen to her beautiful rendition of Little Butterfly.
Okay. This isn't me. Mhm. I hear music, but it's not coming from me. Okay.
I just figured it out and muted the person.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, all the Boswell kids, this is them in their home, were classically trained musicians. Their parents felt it would keep them together and something that Connie could join into easily. And these are baby pictures of them up here too. Martha on piano, Connie smirking on that cello over there, and Vet on the violin. Now, I've been in this house many times. It's on Camp Street, 3937. Now you know all my PIN numbers for everything. That's always my favorite PIN number. Well, anyway, it's on Camp Street, and it's a beautiful raised Victorian Queen Anne era house, raised up about 8-10 feet almost off the ground. And it was built that way. So they remember being kids and being able to run underneath the house and play there. And here's the house. Come on, Dave. This is the house at Camp Street. And there's a marker right here that the New Orleans Jazz Club placed there back when they were much more active. And I went there on the day they hung the marker, and the address is incorrect on the marker, but it's correct on the house. This house, I ended up with a strange gig after Katrina of being the house sitter at this house. I had no house of my own, so it was great to have a fully intact house to go hang in. And I got in, I didn't stay there that long, and I really didn't like staying there late at night. It was a creaky old house. There was no police protection much at that time. And I knew so much about everybody who'd lived and died at that house that I didn't like staying there by myself. It was too many spirits around. But in the front, this is David McCain. David McCain is the Wizard of Boz. If you ever want to know anything about him and you ask any questions, you may be given a giant binder like this of information by David McCain. He has done meticulous lifelong research. David Sager can vouch for that. And he's taking this picture in front of the house and it looks like it's Christmas. And the house is still occupied today. There's a family that lives in it. They did a bunch of renovation on it. And the underneath of the house had been a warren of post-World War II small, like efficiency apartments with just maybe a one room and a bathroom and a kitchenette. Mainly during the time after World War II, people needed houses. That was put in. And during the hippie days, when I was in the 70s or earlier here, my hairdresser swears that he knew a lot of friends that lived in these little efficiencies under here. Now it's been renovated. The new owners made it into two big, sumptuous Airbnb apartments. And there's a group of Boswell singers coming in from Finland called the Merry Ladies. And they always rent those two apartments because there's 6 of them. And when they come in January, they'll be here the first week of January. They're bringing their living room orchestra with them too. They're bringing their full band. So we're going to have some Boswellian parties starting on New Year's Eve when they get here. David knows it all. All right, I have to escape to change it because I can't see how it changes otherwise. Okay, this will be the girls in front of the house. That always said that no matter where you were in the house, if somebody was upstairs, somebody was outside, and someone was underneath, one could start singing and the other two would chime in. That used to also say, and this is her, she was the youngest, but she was the tallest, that she, even when they weren't living in the same cities, she said when she started singing something, she could always hear what their voices would sing with it her whole life. And I totally believe that. That's just something that comes with you. They weren't taught this. There was music in their lives. Their dad and mom, AC and Meldania, also lived in the house. Their Aunt Maddie and her husband, who'd also been part of the carnival circuit, And the four of them used to get together and sing barbershop quartets, which kind of gave them an ear for harmony. And also they would take their children to things that mostly you wouldn't have taken them to. They were different from other parents here. They got to go every Friday night to the Lyric Theater to see Mamie Smith and Bessie Smith and people that I think white people were only invited to this theater on Friday nights. And they would go again and again on Friday night to absorb this music. They were upper middle class enough to have all the latest technology. So yeah, they had a phonograph the minute phonographs came out. They had private recording, tape recording, and on wax disc recording or on shellac disc at their home that they would do makeup plays and stuff and do recordings on. So they were kind of on the cutting edge of the technology at the time. And so they're not very old here. This is just before they got some of their first, they did their first recording. This girl was 12 years old at the time. Martha wrote it, and it was two scintillating blues tunes, The Crying Blues, I'm Gonna Cry, and I forget what the other one was. But I do remember the line in the Crying Blues that refers back to the pandemic, because with all my resistance, with all my persistence, you have much resistance. You treat me like I got the flu. I ain't the Queen of Sheba. But and so anyway, that's just before they recorded for the first time. That's the front porch there. Let's see. Let me change it this way. No, that doesn't work, Holley. You have to go this way. Okay, there's a typo right there. We'll add the N. Well, no, we won't. These girls, this is just a few years later than that other picture. Here's Connie, here's Martha, here's Vet. They've gone totally flapper on us here. In the flapper stage, they would start hanging out near the bars. There was no air conditioning. Windows were wide open. They could hear the music being played in bars. They used to put in money to the jukeboxes and listen to all the newest songs too. There was a Louis Armstrong song that truly impressed them. And that was one of their first songs. And it was Heebie Jeebie Blues. And that was Lewis and the Hot Five. That was that was the first huge hit for them, really. And he, of course, has all the scat singing in the middle of it. And I used to think maybe that's just a jazz legend, but I started doing the jazz history tours in 2020. And I started researching him and looking at all the video on him. That is a true story. I saw him tell it on Dick Cavett exactly as it happened. And it's just other things that I've heard about him were most always, the legends we hear about Louis are pretty much validated most of the time in New Orleans. So they got to take advantage of everything that there was to offer in this town. And so things changed. That cello went. The cello was traded for a banjo. And no, well, I'm sorry, the violin was traded for a banjo because that's Vet playing the banjo. Her banjo is now in the Historic New Orleans collection. Martha's still on the piano, holding down everything as she always did. And she was the colossus of this group. She not only is singing all that intricate stuff, she's entertaining as she's going. She is playing the tar out of the piano all the time. And it's very rare for people to recognize her for that, but she's an amazing pianist. And here's Connie, and she has gone on to take up saxophone. And they even had one gig in some piece of research I did where they got offered to play on a riverboat as substitute musicians for some people who were leaving. And they were so young at the time, they had to be excused from school to do it. And they had such a great time on that boat. Connie said no one went to sleep the night they were there. They played all night. And then they went back home on the last night. But they changed with the times. And their scat stuff, if you listen to their Heebie Jeebie Blues, almost verbatim some of the stuff that Armstrong sings on it, his version, and except now they're all in 3 parts and more stylized. Okay, no, I'm doing it again. Not that. Don't do that. Do this. And that's pretty much as far as I got with these slides. I want to show y'all a trailer from, there is a friend that has made a, I think it's, God, probably close to 10 years. David Sager will know this better than I, where the various fans have been working on a documentary trying to tell their story. And it has been worked on, and funding scraped together, but there's finally gotten finished. And I was sent by email this video, and I'm going to have to screen share it because I couldn't embed it because I don't think they want it out there real publicly, but haha, we're going to watch it tonight. This is from, I think the story is called Close Harmony. I think the film is called Close Harmony. And it's coming out eventually. Joshua Tree Productions did it. And I think it was just 2 months ago that I got this to see. So I'm going to share it with you guys because it's nicely done. Here's Bing Crosby quote up here. The story of 3 girls, but with a single thought, harmony. And what harmony? You have to also remember Frank Sinatra's quote about the sisters. He said, without a doubt, Connie Boswell is the most widely imitated singer of all time. And Ella, I had only one person that influenced me, she said, and that person was Miss Connie Boswell. I tried to sing exactly like she would sing. She said, if you don't believe me, go check out the recordings made at the time, and you'll see she was doing things nobody else was doing. And truthfully, the things she was doing were just pure D.O., regular New Orleans things. They just hadn't got up there yet. There was one very popular trio before the Boswell sisters on Broadway called the Brock Sisters. They were gorgeous. They popularized Singing in the Rain, but they were straight 1, 2, 3, 4 Broadway type singers, Tin Pan Alley singers. There was no rhythm and harmony in what they did. But let's look at this real quick because I think it's beautifully done. I'm going to try to full screen it here.
No big broadcast would be quite complete without those 3 little girls from New Orleans. Permit me to present the Boswell sisters, Connie, Vet, and Martha.
Crazy people, crazy people like me, go crazy old people like you. Go big people, damn people like me, go crazy over things you do.
During the darkest days of America's Great Depression, the Boswell sisters illuminated the world of popular music as brilliantly but briefly as a flash of lightning, with their precisely crafted yet ethereal vocal arrangements.
Crazy people like you.
If you want to hear something like the Beatles in American popular music, I don't think there's very much between them in the 60s and the Boswells in 35, 36 in terms of the sheer fun that both groups always seem to be having with their music. The Boswells are always having fun. They're always sly. They're always winking at you. They're always...
Well, that's a first. I think her battery ran out before she could plug in. Maybe, yeah. That's kind of funny. It looked like an interesting start to the trailer, though. I'm just gonna hit her up on the phone quickly. Hey, Dave, you want to chat a little bit? You got any fill-in for me?
Hey. Gee, I can't think of a clean limerick. You know,
I wouldn't expect you to.
but it's so wonderful to hear Holley. You know, just that just brings me right back to the days when I was playing with them, and she always had that warm New Orleans accent. She's a real doll.
Can you tell us a little bit about playing with them? Like, she said you played with them for like a year and a half, right? When we say them, we're talking about the Pfister Sisters.
The Pfister Sisters, and the band at the time was called the Misters Pfister.
Misters Pfister.
I'm back.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Hey.
Sorry, guys. Here we go again.
Good. We're chatting a little bit with Dave. He was just starting to tell us. I was asking about when he played for you, for that year and a half, and he was just talking a little bit about that.
Well, he was crazy to do it. We all were, but that's what made it fun. And don't forget, look up Live at Mahogany Hall, the Pfister Sisters, and you will see how we all looked in our 20s and 30s. We sound really good because, as Amicy said, we were playing there 5 and 6 nights a week. We should have sounded good.
Right.
Let me throw the video back on so it can finish. I'm so sorry, guys. I didn't know I was that close to being out.
I saw you scurry for the cord, and I was like, oh, just a little bit late.
Okay, share screen again.
Yep, and also start your video.
Start my video again.
There you are.
Did it show up?
Yep, I'm spotlighting you again. You should be good to go.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Okay, we're going to try it again. Back to the video. I can't see where I am. Let's see.
And share the screen once you get settled on that.
Okay. Let me get back. We started a little back from where it was. Okay.
During the darkest days of America's Great Depression, the Boswell sisters illuminated the world of popular music as brilliantly but briefly as a flash of lightning, with their precisely crafted yet ethereal vocal arrangements.
People like you.
If you want to hear something like the Beatles in American popular music, I don't think there's very much between them in the 60s and the Boswells in 35, 36 in terms of the sheer fun that both groups always seem to be having with their music. The Boswells are always having fun. They're always sly. They're always winking at you. They're always sexy in a way that makes you feel comfortable to be around them.
We look at pictures from their European tour and see how they were mobbed all over. As late as 1935, we see these pictures of crowds lining up for see them. And we have to process that it's not just some interesting sort of jazz niche kind of a boutique thing. It was really massive. It was as mainstream as you could possibly get.
Hey, Holly, it's still not visible. We can see the Zoom window, but not the video.
I can't say about too many singers.
That was right where we left
I can't
off,
see
though.
it either. Hang on.
Operatic singers, and they were stage singers and film singers, but there's these ladies that were really jazz singers.
I don't know where it went, y'all.
Everything about their music is so seamless that you now have a whole. You have a complete whole. It becomes gestalt. You can't look at the individual pieces and then construct that whole. It's so seamless and natural.
Guys, I can't find out what happened to it. Hang on.
I think you just need to click that tab again.
It's all gone when my computer went off. I don't know what happened.
Oh, interesting. Because we can sort of see it, sort of. If you arrow up, like scroll your cursor up a little bit and to the right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if it'll move. Like if I can talk you into it if you can't see it.
I'm sorry, I'm the least technological person on the world.
That's okay. So if you can move, can you move your little arrow over, your cursor over?
I've got share. Should I do new share?
No. Leave it as it's shared already. Just literally, I can see your actual computer screen, and it's I can see the tab you're trying to get to, even though you can't. So if you scroll to the right, I might be able to talk you through it.
I think I see it. We're up here. It was easier when it was smaller. Ha! Did it show up?
We've got your whole screen. We don't see the video.
Quite complete without those three little girls.
I can hear it though.
Permit me to present the Boswell sisters, Connie, Vet, and...
Did they show up?
Yes.
Hallelujah.
Crazy people, crazy people, crazy like me, go crazy old people like you. Goofy people, damn people like me, go crazy over things you do.
During the darkest days of America's Great Depression, the Boswell sisters illuminated the world of popular music as brilliantly but briefly as a flash of lightning, with their precisely crafted yet ethereal vocal arrangements.
Crazy people like you.
If you want to hear something like the Beatles in American popular music, I don't think there's very much between them in the 60s and the Boswells in 35, 36 in terms of the sheer fun that both groups always seem to be having with their music. The Boswells are always having fun. They're always sly. They're always winking at you. They're always sexy in a way that makes you feel comfortable to be around them.
We look at pictures from their European tour and see how they were mobbed all over. As late as 1935, we see these pictures of crowds lining up blocks and blocks to see them. And we have to process that it's not just some interesting sort of jazz niche kind of a boutique thing. It was really massive. It was as mainstream as you could possibly get.
I think of them as singers, but really jazz musicians too, which I can't say about too many singers from that period. They were operatic singers and they were stage singers and film singers, but there's these ladies that were really jazz singers.
Everything about their music is so seamless that you now have a whole. You have a complete whole. It becomes gestalt. You can't look at the individual pieces and then construct that whole. It's so seamless and natural.
Glory, hallelujah. We finally got there. Let me unshare it. Stop the share.
Did they mention when the movie's actually coming out?
I don't know exactly. They're peddling it right now. They're trying to peddle it to PBS. I don't know what the outlook is right now for it. David Sager might know more than I know. But definitely that last person was Cairo, who is Vet's granddaughter. And she also wrote that wonderful book that finally tells the full story of the Boswells too. So we've taken all those scraps of paper and little bits and drabs from when we started 43 years ago. And now we've kind of pulled them all together. And the mysterious things that we didn't know about them are kind of got found out. And basically, I think the thing we all wondered was, why did they quit doing the trio? And we were thinking, well, maybe because you married and you didn't keep working, or what could it have been? And Beth said, no. She says, I always felt we should have kept doing it. We both wanted to keep doing it. It was actually Connie and her husband that didn't want to do the trio anymore. And it was because it was competition for her now solo career. And she did a huge amount of solo stuff too, for many, many more years. I first saw her on TV. I can remember it was a show she was on where she would be the singer in some bar club, and there would be a detective that would come in, and I can't recall the name of it, but I really liked her character because she was always seen either at the bar or the piano, and she always had songs to sing in it. But that's the only time I ever heard of them up until I moved here. But the way they got so famous was they sang in the LA end of the first Coast to Coast radio hookup for CBS. And there was a performance from New York, another one from Chicago, and they were proving that you could sing from California and still be on the same broadcast. They got like a telegram with the next morning asking, could they possibly come out and work for CBS in New York City? And they had previously been semi-starving to death. And just deciding they weren't going to go home no matter how broke they got. And they got on the train and left. And every time they would show up, be it the movies or the radio, no one had any inkling that Connie could not walk. They didn't mention it. They didn't think much about it. And it became as a surprise. And so that's why you see them in the movies in all these very strange configurations. Close Harmony, they're you can look these up on YouTube. They're singing to the farm animals to increase production with jazz music. The cows are give, cow, give. Chicken has to lay an egg. We once learned those. We learned 3 of those tunes from that and did that for a show we did about them. They were singing bakers in another movie. It always had to be a way so that they could be seated. When you see the way they work, Martha's playing her butt off there. Connie's on the other side of the piano, her right-hand side. They're tilted a little to look at the audience, and Yvette is over the back of them. And she said she would just keep her hands on their shoulders. And if anybody started to break up or act up or not do the right thing, she'd give them a pinch. She was the enforcer. And literally when they left town in the 1920s, that was literally 12, 13 years old. And their parents let them go. Unheard of at that time. So, and why don't we hear more about them? Well, the second year, there was Coast to Coast radio hookups. There were not 1, not 2, but 8 different sister trio groups. 5 were white, 2 were black. And they were all trying to sound exactly like the Boswell sisters. Some did better than others at it. My favorite, the Brown sisters, they were the black girls that wore the same costumes and sang actual Boswell sisters reharmonized and did their own too. They weren't heard much of because my thought is it's because they're women and white women at that, they just weren't included in jazz. Like when Ken Burns came to do the jazz history, there's no mention of them. I think he only mentions 3 women, and it's in passing really quickly. I think there's a montage where Ella goes by, and then Billy goes by, and then Mary Lou Williams goes by. And that's pretty much was it for females as far as he was concerned. So every time I'd watch one of those shows, I'd be so excited about it. And then I'd get so mad, I'd turn off the TV when I hit a part I didn't like. But I did learn from Bruce Rayburn that Ken Burns spent all of 3 days in New Orleans doing research for that. So that would explain a lot. So their imprint was on the rest of popular music for all time. so much group singing. They were the first to do that. They were an influence on the Mills Brothers. They cite them as an influence. Everybody that came after them, the Andrews sisters, literally channeled them to the point where they would have Southern accents and the similar hairdos, but they were really from Minnesota and were Greek Norwegian girls. And my group, the Pfister Sisters, did have one occasion where we got to sing with Maxine Andrews. It was the days before they did away with deductions for entertainment at conventions. And there was a big show, a TV convention put on, where they put a big fake airplane up and put us on one wing and a swing dancers on the other wing, and had her dressed kind of like a general in the front, walking up and down, making speeches. And she was hysterically funny. I think she was kind of going into some dementia at that point, but and we were kind of all a little worried about that evening. When that light hit her, she walked in up, made a speech as if she were General Patton. It might not have been exactly what they, word for word, what they wanted her to say, but it was, the whole idea was in what she said. So when you look back now, the internet, it's spread all over the world. It's everywhere. So, but yet not any of us, not even one configuration can come anything close to what they did, because that's just pure blood harmony there. That's it. You have the same genes, the same speech pattern, everything the same. And so these women were just like this up until the trio split, and then it was like this and two over here. So that was a sad ending to really what had been a lifetime of being together. 1936, last recording. Bette was actually pregnant and married at the time of that last recording, which is, I'm trying to think of the songs it was. One was Object of My Affection, and the other side was Say It Isn't, not Say It Isn't So. If It Ain't Love, it's called If It Ain't Love. And there's some of the very few Everything's in One Tempo songs that they ever recorded, because the people that recorded them, the producers, hated what they did. They would say, stick to the melody, just sing the melody. Just like the lady that called them savage chanters. But they did just what they wanted to. They didn't care what anyone told them to do. So that's the good part about them. And they're from New Orleans, even better. Anybody want to say anything besides me?
Well, so you said that the trio went until 1936. Mm-hmm. How long was Connie's solo career after that? Because she's the one who died first, right?
No, Martha died in the.
Oh, Martha died first, so she died in 76. Then
she died in the 70s, and she had somewhat of a career all the way through. She had a solo career. She would be when they had the variety shows on TV. She would often appear on variety shows. Bing Crosby was a big colleague and fan. There's some variety show where she actually got the cello out and played something on it that I saw. But again, David Sager, David McCain, they know these things. They know all these things. I just know little stuff.
You know, you've probably heard it. I'm sure you've heard it. Kyla revealed this recording, a radio broadcast where Connie plays the saxophone, a duet, I think, with Eddie Miller, if I'm not mistaken.
I haven't seen that. I would love to see it.
Yeah, no, it's just the audio, and she's just, she's playing the melody, but a good hot melody. She really could play that thing.
She just had it, and she had it in large amounts. She had it, and thank God she did have it. That thank God she had a career off of her voice, because
there was another group actually that I could equate with them from the late 20s, and I don't think there was any connection between the two. And there were the Mooney brothers, who were known as the Sunshine Boys. Joe and Dan Mooney.
Yeah, I remember hearing about them. I don't know a lot about them.
Yeah, nothing to do with the movie, the play, The Sunshine Boys. But And Joe Mooney had a career in the 40s and 50s, singing and playing the accordion. He was a very fine jazz musician, blind. But they made a bunch of records for Columbia between like 1920, 28 and 1930, 31. And they do this very similar kind of shtick as the Boswells. I mean, neither one copied from the other. But so very, very intricate and close and kind of magical.
You know, have you ever seen that film, that German film called The Comedian Harmonist?
Yeah.
They were heavily influenced by the Rhythm Boys and the Boswell sisters. And they were 3 were Jewish, 3 were not. They were in Germany before World War II. And they had one of those dramatic escapes. And they would do just straight up rhythm and harmony. There were 6 of them, I think.
Yeah.
And they literally did one of those Sound of Music walkouts. They're on a show, they're on the stage. Some of them are going, and the 3 that are Jewish leave and don't come back, and the other 3 finish the show and give them time to leave. It's a good film. And when we had to go do a cabaret show in Berlin one summer, and we were trying to learn something in German, and it turned out German is very hard for us to sing in, or anybody, except certain operas maybe. And we were trying hard to sing Glow Little Glowworm in German. It just didn't sound, it wasn't good. So our German cover was Comedian Harmonist Creole Love Call. That we could do. And we didn't have to be German. So that was our German number for that summer.
I was thinking a lot about, in the past week or so, since I heard that this was going to happen, about when Vette came to New Orleans.
Yes.
And how it was a great story.
Weren't you there?
Oh yes, I was there across the street from David McCain's house.
Like, this is that meeting across the street from David McCain's house. And you see David always puts the Boswells a picture in the picture.
Yeah.
And this was when she came to Snug Harbor and got up on stage and sang.
Oh, I missed that.
Listen, she wouldn't get off the stage. She was having a great time. She would suggest the next number and off we'd go. And her daughter, Chica, was doing everything in her power to try to drag her off the stage. And it was a funny little dynamic to watch, because she was having a grand time. She didn't care. And like
George
I said,
Finola told me, if you all don't know, George Finola was a great cornet player from New Orleans, actually from Chicago. I know Holley knew him well. And he was one of the persons who met Vette when she came into the MSY airport. And he said they had a little band to greet her, and she came to through the gate and came out, and there were reporters taking pictures, and I guess, I don't know if they still use those. They didn't use those flash bulbs then, but flashing lights anyway. And she had on the turban and the red lips. She was gorgeous, you know.
always turned out to a T.
Very beautiful. And George says, doesn't that bother you? And she said, Vette just smiled at him and said, I love it.
She did love it. I think she got homesick up there in New York after all that time, you know? It was a long time she was there.
Yeah.
And another person she saw on that trip, Miss Dixie Fosnack, her classmate from Nichols Industrial School, which was the vocational track. In those days, if you played music for a living, it was live. So that was a vocational track. You weren't going to college for that. And they had this school, and Dixie played clarinet, and she had an all-female trad band called the Rhythm Girls, the Hot Rhythm Girls or something. And Dixie was like, and Vette were both about like this big, and God, about 4'8" or 10, maybe, on a good day. And they had the best time together, like drinking and talking. And just carrying on, they remembered everything about their school.
Yeah,
Maybe not everything about yesterday, but a lot about their school days.
I remember now another person who came out to see her. I don't remember the name or I think it was a niece. It was a relative of Emmett Hardy's, who was this legendary cornet player from New Orleans, who I guess was, Martha was in love with him, as I understand.
Yeah. And he died young.
Very, very young. But when Vet came out, came to New Orleans, one of Emmett's, or a couple of Emmett's relatives were there to greet her. And it was very, very sweet.
Every bit of that was the work of David C. McCain.
Yeah.
You can be sure. He figured out how to make it happen. I don't think Vet ever knew she had gotten on an airplane. I don't think she did. She came in thinking she had come on a bus at one point.
She was a little confused.
Well, maybe she was sitting on the aisle. I don't know. It could have seemed like a bus, but she had a damn good time. And we're so glad that she got to do that, when she still could and when we could be there too.
Yeah, that was very, very special.
But G. Dave, we've been touting this music for 40 something years now, dude.
50 something years.
I think it's only 40 something.
So since I have both of you in here, Holley, you first. If anybody watching the video has not spent much time hearing the Boswell sisters, if they are not familiar with their recordings, can you tell me what you would say would be maybe the first one, the first song or the first album that you would recommend somebody to look into?
There's so many of them. And I had a favorite box set, but that was back when there used to be LPs.
Right, yeah.
I guess they're back now. And it was a reissue from Brunswick. It was four different LPs in it. It was it was a lot of stuff. But I know now that anything you feel like looking for, just get on the internet. It's there somewhere. Here's my favorite thing, and I didn't look this up, and I meant to look this up for this particularly. There exists a newsreel clip online, and you can put in Boswell Sisters, Steps of the Capitol, something like that. They tried to film a newsreel of them sitting on the steps of the Capitol in Washington, and there are an assembly of all white men behind them who are the senators and congressmen, and there's maybe a dozen of them or more. And here's Connie sitting there, Martha sitting there, and they're going to a cappella sing, "We're gonna put that sun back in the sky," and they're clapping like this. And they try to film this thing not once, not twice, but 3 times. And on no takes could any senator or congressman clap together at the same time, not unlike today. And they just couldn't. And you could, the fun part about it is watching it. The first time they just do a do-over. The second time they're starting to break up. The third time it's outright prolonged, breaking up, laughter, crying, because it's just so damn funny. That's my most fun video clip of them. And it's also them as they look just hanging around. I mean, it's not like a big show. It's not like a movie set up. It's just them trying to do promotion for themselves and beat the depression as best they could. And
that would be a really fun one to see, particularly for the DC area folk here, I think. Yeah. What about you, Dave? You have any favorite songs or recordings or anything?
Their first, I never heard a record by them that wasn't terrific. At the very least, terrific. And for the most part, fantastic. But their very first Brunswick record is "When I Take My Sugar to Tea."
Oh yeah.
And they come on like 3 lions, and they got the Dorsey brothers behind them, and everyone's on fire. It's just wonderful.
On that recording, they were so excited about it. When they finished the take, everyone in the band gave them a standing ovation. And it was, Bunny Berrigan, the Dorseys, Eddie Lang was often with them. Glenn Miller sometimes was with them. That's another thing. The bands they used, their bands were the perfect transition between the traditional New Orleans jazz band, and the big bands that were coming. They were like that little transitional, slightly bigger swing time. And there's just nothing like it. It's all of our favorite music. And I guess it always will be.
Wow.
That's great. I'll be in town first week of January. I might have to hit you up and find out about the Finnish group.
They're coming. In fact, I think we're gonna do something New Year's Eve with them.
I won't be there by then. I'm gonna come in a day or two after that.
We're gonna be here. I think they're here till the 9th of January. And yeah, more and more things will happen. I think I've got 2 more things set up with them, but I've not got it in stone yet. So, but I do have New Year's Eve at Buffa's in stone, and they're only flying in the day.
They usually live stream all the stuff from Bufa, so
yeah, they do.
Yeah, so that could be visible from anywhere. Yeah.
I can't imagine what this would be like, because they have just flown in like the day before, left one night, gotten up in the morning. The bass player is going over to the string shop to pick up his rental bass, and I said, saying, well, if this wouldn't be too outrageous, they've asked us to play that night, and we didn't really choose to play that night, but if you would like to, we'd love to come together and do it together. And they loved it. They loved the idea. And I'm like, these people are tough. But I don't, New Year's Eve is a huge holiday in Scandinavian culture. It's like you do stay up all night. You do burn a fire. You do drink the whole night. And I'm not going to be doing any of that, but I think they were excited. So they sent me back yes, we'd love to do that. So they're bringing their orchestra, which is guitar, bass, and violin. And I think one of the ladies that sings gave birth to the violinist, and I don't know how they got the other 2 people to play with them, but these women are tough. They are also, David, the only people I know of in the world that have translated a bunch of Boswell songs into Finnish. If you want to see how it sounds, and it's good, it's like real good translations, because there's 6 women that sing with this group of people. They're called the Merry Ladies in English. I can't pronounce the Finnish. And 3 of them are like major figures in Finnish culture. One runs a really old program to help women worldwide, where she's in and out of Africa all the time trying to uplift women.
Wow.
One is I want to say she's a microbiologist and is studying the mitochondria, and just made a major discovery she's a professor at the University of Helsinki. And then there's the one that did the translations is an internationally known author. And since she writes in Finnish, her work has to be all translated into all the other languages. So she's the one that went in and did some translations. So it's pretty exciting.
Wow.
To know that they're coming. We're all excited to see them again.
Great. Well, we are a little past time, and we're going to wrap everything up, but this was great. It was so nice having you, and thank you for sharing both your knowledge about the Boswells, but also your experiences around them. I think that was fantastic to hear. And we appreciate everybody coming, and we will send a YouTube link around later, so if anybody wants to rewatch, that will be available for watching. We put these shows on for free to everybody, but we do take donations, and I'll put a little link in there in case anybody wants to chip in toward the presentation too.
Well, if you can edit out all the part where I lost my computer, that would be nice.
I can't, but it's okay.
It's great to see you, Holley.
It's good to see you, and you look always just exactly the same.
Well,
you never age, Dave. Never.
He's a vampire.
Well, that could be the reason.
Don't get me started.
He's a jazz vampire.
Exactly.
All right.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Good night, guys.
Good night.